Hello. Hi. Are you ready? Are we ready?
Yes.
As I know, that's the last talk before the lunch break, so I hope you will stay with us awake. So please, let me first introduce ourselves. I'm Vitaly, and here's Sinem. We are engineers, Adobe engineers. We mostly focusing on integrating generative AI into products like AEM. And today, we're going to talk about GenAI. And we will show you the app that we've built a few months ago and why we did it. The team is now working on its second version. We will tell you the story of the making. We will talk about the learnings and challenges, and we will show you the tech stack we used. And you will have your takeaways in the end, as usual, some useful tips and tricks. So first of all, we know that GenAI is incredibly useful in daily life. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but I wanted to ask you, how often do you use tools like ChatGPT or maybe GitHub Copilot? I use it a lot. And Sinem too, maybe you can, like, a quick show of hands. Like, are you actually, honestly, like, yeah, everybody, pretty much. So we know it's useful. Now the question is, can it be used outside of chat-based systems? Because we know all the systems that are more like chats. Also, can we integrate it with non-AI products like AEM? Because in the end, if you think of it, it looks like one system is going to be talking to another using plain English. Like, hey, how are you? Can you translate something to me? Something that we actually see in agentic systems. They even chit-chatting. So can it even work? And how practical is it for business use and specifically in web marketing? So we are developers, like pretty much most of you. And at one point, we thought, is there any value in integrating Gen AI into product like ours? So we decided to build an app. But wait, does it make sense to build something without having a clear use case and a customer in mind? So I would let Sinem to talk about actually why and how we decided to build this app.
So thank you, Vitaly. I would like to start with this landing page from adobe.com. You see here, there is this hero banner, has title, body, and a couple of buttons. And I would like to ask you actually, how much time does it take to update a content like this? Do you have any guesses in numbers? Okay, I will tell you, it's 12 weeks. Traditionally, it takes 12 weeks to update a content, to test this content and generate 5 different variations for it. So it's a long process. It contains writing the brief, designing the text, receiving the assets, feedbacks, review, revise, and finally launch the test. So it's only for 5 variations, and 12 weeks a bit too much, right? And also to prove this point, we have another use case from Creative Cloud team. You probably heard about Creative Cloud. They have the apps, this fantastic Photoshop and so on. And they have this desktop app that you can see your apps. The Creative Cloud team wanted to increase their engagement, their revenue through their marketing banners on the app. And but it wasn't so easy because the content is constrained by the resources and the budgets. The same reason that I counted in the previous slide. And they found out their existing marketing copy is actually not resonating with the target audiences, so they weren't so successful with that. And they didn't have too much time to run all the experiments. So with that, meanwhile, we were thinking all the hype around Gen AI. Is it worth to productize it? And since we had this use case from Creative Cloud, we thought maybe we can give it a chance and try our hypothesis, test our hypothesis in this use case. So we said to them, using Gen AI can reduce the content creation time, increase the revenue that you were targeting, and also user engagement. And since you have lots of audience type and different languages, we can create you a content. And yeah, it worked. So you saw this timeline before. It took 12 weeks, 5 variations, and so on. But for Creative Cloud, it took only 2 weeks to generate 63 variations. So yeah, it was an inspiration for us to take this Gen AI into a production. And this is how our development journey began. In early 2023, we started content generation experiments in our Jupyter notebooks to write the prompts and, in the end, getting a cool content that actually useful for marketers, not for like only to show Gen AI is creating something. No, it's also for us important that marketers should benefit from that. So we took the prompt engineering very serious, and we iterated on the prompts with the marketer teams from our customers. We were providing them good output, and they were helping us to iterate on the prompts. And with that, we created a couple of prompt templates to be used to generate web page elements. And yeah, as you can see in the gift, it was generating the title, body, call to action text, whatever you need for your web page element. And since we have this prompt templates, which was proven was useful, we started productizing using the prompt templates in October 2023. And then with that, I would like to give space to Vitaly and tell us, Vitaly, how we built the app, the first version.
Yeah, thank you, Sinem. I'm not sure if you can see my pointer. No. I mean, let's take a look at this diagram. Can you see something unusual here? I don't, because that's something that this design of the app you can see everywhere. Pretty much most of the apps use it. There is a front end and back end. Front end is written in JavaScript, we use React Spectrum. It's very kind of common JavaScript framework. We also use Adobe Express Embedded SDK, which is a JavaScript library to communicate with Adobe Firefly and generate images using diffusion models. On the backend side, we use Adobe I/O Runtime. That's a serverless backend. Again, pretty common nowadays. Every action is a serverless function that connects us to one of the upstream services. We use, as an LLM, we use Azure OpenAI. It's very convenient. It's part of the Microsoft Cognitive Services. It comes from many other things. And basically, that's it. And the whole thing is connected to existing products like Age Delivery. We use Sidekick plugin. We also build Quick Start integration to connect to Adobe, to AEM CS. And also, we have added a button to Content Fragment Editor using AEM UI Extensibility Framework. You've heard about it on Monday, I believe. That's it. And what happens behind the scene, this is a little bit unusual. That's what happens. This is a journey of the prompt. I would call it like this. So you will see it in the demo. When user selects a prompt or use case, what we do, we go to the prompt template registry. We read the prompt from there. It's a template. It has placeholders in it. We dynamically generate a form for a user to fill in, because there are placeholders when we don't know the values for it. So user is supposed to provide them. And we use these values to update the prompt, and we send it to LLM along with the hidden piece. And this is not visible to users, but it's visible to LLM. So we add some additional context, which is actually crucial for LLM to understand what's going on and how to generate better results. For example, it could be a scraped content that comes from web scraping service. Or when we generate content fragments, we use content fragment metadata because LLM needs to know the structure of the fragment to generate it. So we add it to the hidden part of the prompt. It goes to LLM, and LLM gives us back JSON, which we just parse and show in the UI. That's it.
Thank you, Vitaly. So with that, I would like to introduce you the first version of Generate Variation app. So here's the homepage of the app. It's a standalone app. We designed it like this in the first version. So you see here we have multiple prompt templates for each sections of a web page. So for demo purposes, I would like to choose a hero banner. And once I click this, you see multiple input fields other than a prompt itself, because we already have the prompt here. But you still have to fill the placeholders so that large language model can generate you something that is actually useful for your case. I already wrote some values for these input fields. Let me hit the generate button while I go through all the things, because it takes time. So the first thing, user interaction. Explain user interaction, what you are aiming to achieve with this content. The second one, the intent. What will be the intent of the text? And the third, the audiences can come from Adobe Target, or you can also upload a CSV file. You can set your tone of voice, you can decide on the number of variations, and you can fetch a text content from a URL that whatever URL you want to do. And then hitting the generate button, you see 3 variations. Just choose one and see title, body, call to action is generated perfect. And you can also generate an image for your generated content. We are using here, as Vitaly introduced, Adobe Express SDK. And once you hit this generate image button, in the back we write an image prompt, which could fit into your generated content. So you don't have to write, you don't have to think, what should I write in the image prompt, and so on. Once you have the images generated, you can edit them. Before that, you can also upload the reference images. These are all functionality coming from Adobe Express tool. So cool, I have some surfing pictures. Let me choose one. And yeah, it's ready to be used. So let's switch back to the presentation. And yeah, Vitaly, please tell us what we did differently in version 2.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Sinem. So as I said, the team is now working on the version 2 of the app. And we made some changes. We referred to our customers, and most of them wanted to see the live preview. They really wanted to be connected to what's going on. So right now, it's not in the version 2, it's not a kind of standalone full screen application. It's rather an overlay on top of existing live page we injected dynamically. So users can select something on their website because they have access to the document. They can regenerate something and immediately preview it. That was really important for many customers because they care about the typography and how exactly the text folds. They even hired designers to create a mock of the page just to see, even when they need to change one simple heading somewhere. That was really important. We made some more changes in the prompt journey. So customers and users do not need to manually select the prompt template anymore. We only ask them provide a simple sentence describing the intent. So from this intent, we automatically figure out the prompt template, and we also guessing the values, the missing values for the placeholders. And the rest is pretty much it. We also added Gen Studio because we enhanced the hidden part with the brand guidelines and kind of many other things. That's it.
So with that, we are planning to release the version 2 in the incoming weeks. But for now, I think a couple of customers already have alpha version of the app. So we are still gathering feedbacks. We are still improving the app. So, oh, there's a demo time. I forget. So, let me show in the weekend page. This time, as Vitaly mentioned, it's not a standalone app. It's the thing that you have in the bookmarklet. Normally it should open. Okay, here we go. It opens as a side rail. On the right side, you see it takes just a few seconds, I will say, to be loaded. And okay, so the task of today is updating the hero banner of the page. I'll start with selecting this part, simply as dragging my cursor on it. And I can see on the right that the text is selected, and now I have to write what I want to change on the text. You can write, or you can also use the suggestions because they're already good. I would like to choose this time optimize the text for better SEO, which was relevant for me. You can also upload a content brief that would make your new content more relevant to your use case with that. So the content brief, the campaign brief that I just uploading contains target audience, key messaging, the marketing strategy, and so on. So I would expect my new content to be generated by referencing this document. And what else? When I hit the generate button, as Vitaly mentioned, we are getting the branding information from GenStudio. So the large language model knows about my company's branding guidelines, my company information, what kind of tone of voice I prefer, or everything that it has to know that it already knows. With that, I have some variations generated. I would like to choose one of them. I can see it on the in context preview, and maybe it would be better if I just put another line in the body text. Yeah, I can also edit, as you can tell. So I think it looks perfect. Now I would like to save it for the further steps. And yeah, let's go back to the presentation. And I would like to share with you our learnings. What made us move from version 1 to version 2. As Vitaly mentioned, as I showed you, it was very important to have this functionality. The customers, the users, the marketers were telling us that once we generate the content, they had to see it in preview because otherwise it felt so disconnected from the context. And we heard them and we provided them this. Second, marketers shouldn't have to write prompts. So not everyone is ready to do the prompt engineering. So that's why we created the prompt templates for them. But as you can see, even we provided them the prompt templates, they had to still fill the input fields to get a relevant content. And it was often felt so exhausting from the marketers. So we thought about a plan, what we should do. So we kept the fields as, small as possible by one line, and the rest are the documents or the other services that we integrated. And this is important. I can tell when I'm on internet, when I read the blog post, if the text is generated using AI or not, from the word selection or the sentence composition. So for me, I don't like to read this kind of context because it often feels unnatural to me, and I often feel I will skip it. And we try to keep it as own brand as possible, campaign aware, brand aware as possible, because large language model itself don't understand your use case, your company, your brand voice. So, the last but not least, ensure legal compliance. It's very important because consent is very important. Some notes from me: do not train AI models on a customer data without consent. Do not store the user input and the generated content, again, without the consent, because it could be a problem. And respect the third-party rights and copyright laws. And finally, compliance with Adobe terms and conditions. And Vitaly, please tell us about the challenges.
Yeah, now we're going to give you some helpful tips. Maybe you might need it in your own journey. So first of all, technical challenges. I think you know it already, but let me just say it again. GenAI is very hungry. Very, very, very hungry. Like maybe most of you before the lunch break. It wants high-end GPUs. It wants a lot of memory. So if you thought about running your own or open source model on VM, you might need to reconsider it. It's extremely expensive. So LLM as a service is not a bad idea. Then even if you use this as a service, you might still need to consider the cost of tokens, because you might need to add a lot of context, as Sinem just mentioned, because it needs to be on brand, and generation needs to be guided by the context of the page, or maybe the entire website. That's what customers wanted. So be sure to use prompt caching. It's actually a new feature from OpenAI. You need to enable it, and the idea is that you add all this repetitive stuff to the beginning of the prompt, because self-attention computation is very expensive, and vendors like OpenAI are able to cache it. It's a very convenient feature. LLMs, for the same input, they can give you many different outputs. Sometimes this is what you want, and we call it creativity, but sometimes they give you something else. It can give you JSON, but maybe not the JSON you want. So there is also a relatively new feature from OpenAI, actually many other LLMs support it. It's called structured outputs. From my point of view, it's a breakthrough. It's a game changer. That's what helps us to connect the so unpredictable models to the software that we write that requires contracts and well-defined APIs. Because this is not a prompting technique, it's actually part of the transformer. You provide a JSON schema, you can be sure that the model will give you exactly the JSON that adheres to the schema. It's very important. Also, LLMs cannot process any arbitrary number of tokens. There are limits. There is input limit and output limit, and it's a big deal. For example, just to give you a taste, a scraped content, let's say the markup of a regular web page from one of our customers, takes roughly 60% of the context window. So you can add only one page. That it's not enough, actually. So the way to mitigate it would be RAG, retrieval augmented generation, when you cache it, read manual, and prompt chaining. That's basically a chain of prompts that you can combine, something like a graph of thought or tree of thought, something like this. And next up, UX challenges. You've seen it. Inference takes time. If you add a lot of context, it might take minutes. You obviously don't want the users to sit in front of the screen figuring out what's going on. If it's a text, you can use stream responses, which is easy. You've seen it in ChatGPT. You see the content as it comes. But in case of JSON, what we tried, there's a very convenient way. It's best effort JSON parsing. If you combine it with structured output, so basically it's guaranteed that on the highest level, LLM gives you an array, so you can start parsing it before you actually got the whole thing. And once you see the comma, you can actually parse the object and show it on the screen. It's very helpful, because otherwise it might take minutes, which does not make sense for a user. I got a couple of insights from the Workfront team, because they are very advanced. They actually have agents in production, which is a really cool thing, But the problem is that most of the big systems, even the latest ones, they don't support undo functionality because it's simply very expensive. If you have a bunch of databases, you cannot really implement transactions like cross-functional transactions. And what they did, they had to do it. They basically limit the number of possible modifications and only to those. So if everything goes terribly wrong, the user should be able to manually go back and rename something because otherwise there is no other way. Agents are very powerful, but they can create a lot of mess. Another insight I also got from the same team is that they actually figured they got quite a lot of negative feedback from users and they couldn't understand it. I will not disclose the number. And whatever they do, they couldn't fix it. Apparently, it has something to do with human psychology. So we perceive such system as highly intelligent. And users kept giving it tasks more complex and more, because it's clear the system is smart until it fails. And then they give negative feedback. So be sure to inform users that it's smart, it's very powerful, but there are limits. Quality and reliability challenges. You've heard about hallucinations. Models can make things up. So because they are designed to give you logically sound responses, even though it's not true. And it happens often because when the model simply doesn't know what to say. So you can use RAG again and advanced prompting techniques like chain of thought with consistency when the model has a chance to reflect on its own output. It's useful. Content filtering is not just about harmful content that can go in and out. It's also about prompt injections attacks. And this could be tricky. It's not just about the input that comes from a user. Someone like a malicious site owner can add something to their website. Then you scrape it, add this content to a database, RAG database, and then your LLM retrieves it. So there is a backdoor to break your system through basically creating a website. Our suggestion would be to use something like Azure OpenAI because content filter comes built in. You don't need to worry about it. In case if you use OpenAI, then they have a separate moderation API, which is a little bit tricky because it's a separate request. You can also use SDKs like LangChain, but then you need to understand how it works. Model updates. We saw, vendors like OpenAI, they often release new models. 3.5, 4, Turbo, etc. We saw how it sometimes breaks the app. Because at one point, we figured that one of the updates broke the app because the model started giving us markdown instead of text. So you need to test it. I have to confess, we do it manually right now, but we are exploring options. One of this is diva-e. It's just open source framework. It's very powerful. On the other end of the spectrum, that's where we are also considering weights and biases, but it costs a ton of money. So you have a lot of money, go for it. Legal and regulatory challenges. This is actually an important one. You've heard about EU Artificial Intelligence Act. You probably heard about GDPR. Everybody was crazy about it because of hefty fines, up to 4% of annual revenue. And this act raises the bar to 7%. And also what's important is the reversal of the burden of proof, which means that if something goes wrong, it also applies to integrators. You would need to disclose everything about your process. So it's better to use something not built by yourself, but one of the compliant LLM providers like OpenAI, because they make sure they comply with everything. And unfortunately, we have to say that in many cases, you would need to say no to open source models because it's a big issue. Fines are super hefty, and in many cases, it's not worth it if it's not for internal use. Comes with legal approvals. At Adobe, I'm not sure I'm disclosing anything, but it's up more than 2 months. It takes more than 2 months for the legals to give you an approval. It is per use case. It's not just about giving approval once. You would need to do it again if you change something. Literally, a little thing, you need to go through everything. Again, more than 2 months, it's a ton of time. And finally, Impact on UI, consents, and disclaimers. They are big, and if you build something like sleek and nice UI, it might be a problem. And final thoughts, GenAI, is it useful? Yeah, sure, we know it. One crazy advantage is that it speeds up content creation. We saw it, and these numbers from customers actually almost 4 times increase. They are more effective. They can create more content because of GenAI. It boosts marketing effectiveness mostly through faster experimentation, because again, it's hard to predict the future, even for LLM, even for AGI, and maybe even super AI. But when you iterate faster, you basically faster come to the better results. That's how it works. We saw CTR increase and also revenue increase. It's data from customers. Context matters. Context is everything. So we need to add, we did blind tests. We showed customers before and after adding the scrapped content and the brand guidelines into the mix. It was clear to customers that it's better. They could even explain it why. API integration is very effective. Again, JSON structured output. And finally, final thought, we made a big mistake. We thought we can automate everything. No, AI is a tool. It's a co-pilot, and it's not a replacement for humans. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks for the great presentation. Yeah. Let's start with questions. Did you consider expanding things like SEO metadata of pages?
SEO.
SEO.
Yeah, but it's in the works. It's in the works. We're experimenting.
Similar feature request, generate AEM tags based on provided content.
The way we work is mostly based on customer feedback. So as long as we have customers who need it, so obviously we considered it, but we didn't see any use cases so far. So we are looking for customers and use cases.
All right, and we have to convince some customers. Very easy. Yeah. Is it possible to have multiple brand guidelines for like a multi-brand company where I have like totally different brands?
I guess so, but I guess this question...
It's coming from the Gen Studio.
Yeah, it's a Gen Studio. It's more
course.
like for Gen Studio folks. Mm-hmm. Again, use case. Yeah.
Next one. Did you consider content 3 specific pre-configured prompts where content paths could have upfront prepared extra prompts to help make sure certain site sections have predefined prompting rules?
I think we have a couple of prototypes of this kind, but it feels like a little bit sophisticated. So we are, again, everything we do is based on value. We didn't see like a lot of value from this kind of thing. We now work with a handful of customers. So yeah, ton of prototypes, but nothing, we don't have plans to prototype.
All right. Then there's a last and final question. It's a question about custom company proxied LLMs as an underlying model instead of Gen Studio.
You mean instead of LLM, instead of OpenAI?
Yeah, instead of OpenAI, like bring your own
LLM. Yeah, we support it. Yeah,
okay.
It's very desirable for us because then we don't need to be responsible for what it's doing. Actually, the best use case.
Excellent. Sinem, Vitaly, great for having you on stage.